Everyone's watching for the Great Tribulation, the worst suffering the world has ever seen, still somewhere up ahead. But listen to how Jesus actually framed it. For at that time there will be great tribulation, unmatched from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be seen again. Matthew 24:21. Unmatched, and never again. Because in one sense it already came, in the fall of Jerusalem, AD 70. So is that the whole story, or was AD 70 only the rehearsal? Stay with me. The most catastrophic prophecy in the Bible ends in glory. The whole study is open in Scribe as we go. Before the tribulation, Jesus dropped a prophecy that stopped the disciples cold. Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. Shaken, they pulled him aside and asked the question that burns in every generation. When will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Matthew 24:3. Notice what they asked. His coming and the end of the age. Two horizons folded into one answer. Hold on to that. So what triggers it? A sign Jesus pulls straight out of Daniel, the Abomination of Desolation. When you see standing in the holy place the Abomination of Desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, Matthew 24:15. Daniel had seen it centuries before. The people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, Daniel 9:26. This prophecy was never vague. It had an address: Jerusalem. Luke makes the target unmistakable. Not signs in the sky, but armies at the gate. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, you will know that her desolation is near, Luke 21:20. The Tyndale commentary is blunt. Jesus was describing the siege and destruction of Jerusalem that would take place in AD 70. Titus surrounded the city, famine raged inside the walls, over 1 million perished, the temple burned to the ground. The rehearsal was real, and it was dated. Two Greek words carry the weight here. The first, megalē, G3173, great, vast, off the charts. The second is the one that bruises. It's the word for a wine press crushing grapes. That's thlipsis, G2347, pressure, the sense of being squeezed and crushed. Put them together and Jesus is naming great pressure, crushing affliction, on a scale history had never seen. Then Jesus does something staggering. He sweeps his arm across all of history. Archē, G746, the origin point. Kosmos, G2889, the entire created order. And he says, nothing like this has ever happened, and nothing like it ever will. Here is the hinge of the whole thing. If it can truly never be repeated, then AD 70 wasn't merely an ending. It was a one-time pattern, pointing past itself to something still to come. And Jesus wasn't the first to see it. Two prophets had already described the same unrepeatable day. Daniel, in the very passage Jesus pointed to, there will be a time of distress, the likes of which will not have occurred from the beginning of nations until that time. Daniel 12:1. And Joel, centuries earlier, sounding the alarm, blow the ram's horn in Zion, sound the alarm on my holy mountain. A day, he said, such as never was of old, nor will ever be in ages to come. Same shape, unique, unrepeatable. The pattern was always bigger than one city. But why would God let it fall at all? His own covenant city. Jesus answered that, weeping, on the road to the same Mount of Olives, because you did not recognize the time of your visitation from God. Luke 19:44. The Son of God had walked their streets, healed their sick, preached in their temple, and they turned away. The tribulation wasn't random violence. It was judgment on a rejected king. And here is what most people miss about judgment. In God, it never comes alone. Malachi said it in a single breath. All the arrogant and every evildoer will be stubble, Malachi 4:1. And then, without pausing, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings, Malachi 4:2. Wrath and healing side by side in the same breath of God, which sets up the most important verse in the whole passage. This is the beat I promised you at the start, the reversal. The catastrophe had a limit, and mercy set it. If those days had not been cut short, nobody would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Matthew 24:22. Cut short, kolobu, G 2856, to dock, curtail, mutilate. God amputated the disaster before it could run its full and fatal course, and he did it for the elect. Electus, G 1588, picked out, select. The elect don't escape the tribulation. God bends history around them. Now watch the camera pull back. Jesus doesn't stop at AD 70. Listen to the very next words. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, Matthew 24:29, and suddenly it turns cosmic. The sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky. And then they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Matthew 24:30. Matthew Henry saw exactly what's happening here. The destruction of Jerusalem serving as a prophetic shadow, a near type of the final consummation. And Wesley, here our Lord begins to speak of his last coming. AD 70 was the shadow. This is the substance. So put it together. Everything Jesus described has two fulfillments. The near one we can date, and the far one still ahead. This is the pattern of the cross: suffering before glory, death before resurrection. Paul lived by it. I consider that our present sufferings are not comparable to the glory that will be revealed in us. Romans 8:18. And the promise reaches even now: all things work together for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. AD 70 was the rehearsal. The real thing, the Son of Man on the clouds, the elect gathered from the four winds, is still coming. That is exactly why Jesus told us in advance. So, are we still headed for the tribulation? The unmatched one, AD 70, is behind us. Jesus said it could never be repeated, but its shadow points forward, and the promise underneath it still stands. Three things to carry home. History is not out of control. Judgment is real. The elect are never abandoned in tribulation. If you belong to God, the days are being cut short for your sake. The whole study is waiting for you in Scribe. Free to try for 30 days /scribe-bible.app.